By 1944, the war was turning against Germany. The Allied bombing campaign had erased entire cities, and factories that once built tanks and aircraft were reduced to rubble. But deep beneath the mountains of Central Europe, a new kind of factory was being born, one that would mark the Third Reich's final gamble. They called them Untertagenlagen, underground installations, hidden tunnels, subterranean workshops, entire cities of steel carved into stone. It was a desperate attempt to keep the war machine alive while the world above collapsed. A war from below. The concept wasn't new. Even before the war, Germany's industrial planners dreamed of building secure production sites immune to air raids. But by late 1943, the idea became an obsession. Allied bombers flew daily over the Ruhr, flattening refineries, railways, and armament plants. Every strike crippled supply chains. Every crater meant another shortage of fuel, of engines, of hope. Hitler demanded a solution. Move production underground. Nothing else matters. Within months, engineers and architects were ordered to find caves, mines, and mountains capable of housing weapons factories. They did. Thousands of them. The Me-262 and the Race Against Time. Among the projects driven underground was Germany's most ambitious weapon, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. It had the speed to outrun Allied planes and the firepower to tear apart bomber formations. But it needed protected assembly lines, places the Allies couldn't bomb. So engineers dug into a forested ridge near Augsburg, creating a network of concrete chambers where jet fuselages could be welded by torchlight. In one section, entire wings were suspended from the ceiling as workers stitched wiring by hand, dust from the mountain coating every tool. Above ground, American reconnaissance planes saw nothing but trees. Below, Germany was trying to reshape the future. Dora Mittelbau, the Factory of Shadows. The most infamous of all these sites was Dora Mittelbau, near Nordhausen. What began as a tunnel system for V-2 rocket storage became a full-scale production complex for Wernher von Braun's missiles. 2 parallel tunnels ran nearly 2 kilometers each, connected by 40-odd cross passages. There was no daylight, no ventilation, only lamps nailed into damp rock. Tens of thousands of forced laborers and concentration camp prisoners were brought here. Polish, French, Russian, Dutch. They worked 12 to 16 hours a day under armed guard, assembling rockets that would later strike London and Antwerp. The air was thick with fumes from engines and concrete dust. Explosions echoed constantly as new chambers were blasted open. Men died from suffocation, collapse, exhaustion, and yet production never stopped. By early 1945, Dora Mittelbau had turned out more than 5,000 V-2s. The rockets became symbols of terror, but the real horror was what happened in the tunnels. Engineering genius, human cost. Technically, these factories were masterpieces. Ventilation shafts recycled heat to keep engines warm. Rail lines wound through caverns so locomotives could deliver parts directly to assembly stations. Power cables and fuel pipelines were buried in rock, safe from bombs. But every inch of that engineering brilliance was built on human suffering. Records estimate that more than 200,000 laborers and prisoners worked in underground facilities across Germany and occupied Europe. Tens of thousands never came out alive. At Dora Mittelbau alone, 1 in 3 workers died, often buried in the same tunnels they helped construct. The contrast was staggering. A civilization capable of inventing the jet engine and the ballistic missile, yet dependent on slave labor to build them. The relocation frenzy. By the final year of the war, entire industries were disappearing underground. The BMW plant at Allach built jet engines inside limestone quarries. At Kaufering, near Dachau, bunkers were poured under layers of concrete so thick Allied bombs barely dented them. In Austria's Bergkristall complex, workers excavated an entire mountain to house the production lines for the Me-262. At its peak, over 13,000 men labored inside Bergkristall. Air entered through narrow shafts. Water dripped from the ceiling. Despite conditions that bordered on the medieval, the factory managed to assemble hundreds of aircraft components before American troops arrived. When Allied soldiers entered the tunnels in May 1945, they found crates of jet fuselages stacked in darkness, and the smell of death lingering in the air. The weapons underground. Beyond jets and rockets, Germany's subterranean factories built everything from tank transmissions to radio tubes. At Mühldorf, engineers tried to produce entire fuselages of the giant Heinkel-He 177 bomber. At Bissingen, synthetic oil plants were hidden inside hillsides. Even U-boat pens, those massive submarine shelters along the French coast, were expanded below ground, their ceilings over 20 feet thick. Each new site consumed steel, concrete, and manpower that Germany no longer had. It was a logistical miracle and a strategic delusion. Instead of concentrating resources, the underground frenzy scattered them, leaving vital projects half-finished as the front collapsed. The Allied view. From the sky, Allied intelligence analysts watched strange landscapes appear. Fresh mounds of earth, rail lines ending abruptly in hillsides, steam vents where no factories existed. Reconnaissance photos puzzled commanders. Where was the production coming from? By late 1944, aerial photography and resistance reports revealed the truth. The US and Britain launched targeted raids on known tunnel entrances, though most were too deep to destroy. Inside the Pentagon, analysts realized something else. Germany's innovation wasn't dead. It had just gone underground. If the war lasted another year, the enemy might emerge with technology years ahead of the Allies. That realization accelerated Operation Overlord, the push to end the war before those underground dreams became reality. Collapse of the underground empire. When Allied troops entered Germany in 1945, they found hundreds of tunnel networks, some finished, others half-collapsed. In places like Nordhausen, soldiers walked through galleries lined with half-assembled rockets and the bodies of prisoners who hadn't escaped. The documentation left behind was staggering. Blueprints for supersonic aircraft, ramjet missiles, even atomic research were found hidden in caves and salt mines. Yet the empire of tunnels had failed. The rockets couldn't stop the Allied advance. The jets came too late to change the air war, and the cost in human life had drained Germany's last reserves of labor and morality. What the Allies learned. After the war, Allied engineers studied the underground sites in detail. British investigators photographed the V-2 assembly lines. Americans dismantled equipment and shipped it home. Soviet teams occupied others, removing machinery and scientists alike. The research formed the basis for both Cold War missile programs. The US Redstone and the Soviet R-series traced their lineage directly to Dora Mittelbau's designs. Even the concept of hardened underground command centers, like NORAD or Moscow's bunkers, was born from these German experiments. The war's final innovation wasn't a weapon, but an idea. Survival through concealment. The hidden legacy. For decades after 1945, the tunnels lay sealed. Locals whispered about ghosts, strange metals, and secret weapons buried below. Only in the 1990s did historians begin reopening them, turning some into memorials. At Mittelbau-Dora, visitors now walk through the same entrance once guarded by soldiers. The air is cold, still carrying the faint scent of oil. Steel beams sag where machines once stood. Every few meters, plaques mark where workers collapsed, where engines roared, where a civilization dug its own grave. One survivor later said, "Down there we built rockets to reach the stars, but the only thing that reached the sky were our souls." Lessons in desperation. Germany's underground factories were both brilliant and tragic. They represented a fusion of cutting-edge engineering and moral collapse, a society using science to postpone defeat instead of prevent it. From a purely military perspective, they delayed destruction. From a human one, they deepened it. The more the Reich hid beneath the earth, the less of its humanity remained above it. The end of the line. In April 1945, Allied troops captured Nordhausen. Inside the Dora tunnels, they found thousands of corpses, prisoners who'd been left behind when guards fled. Nearby, the survivors stood silent, unable to comprehend that freedom had come from above, not below. Photographs taken that week became some of the most haunting images of the war. For the soldiers who entered those tunnels, the contrast between technology and suffering was almost unbearable. In a war filled with symbols, the underground factories became the final one, the moment when modernity itself turned inward. Reflection. Today, when engineers design secure facilities or underground data centers, they unknowingly trace a legacy born in those tunnels. It's a reminder that innovation without conscience is a weapon pointed at its maker. The underground cities of 1945 were meant to save an empire. Instead, they buried it. They remain silent witnesses to a truth every generation must relearn. When a nation starts hiding its progress underground, it's already lost the light.